Welcome everyone to Sunday Wisdom Sessions. Today we're going to be talking about relating. And when we talk about relating, I had to put some effort into choosing the wording for today's topic. Is it about relationships? Now, relationships gives the association of family, of close relationships. Yes, it includes that. But then what about relationship with the world, with objects, with the weather, with politics, with the news? How do we relate with that? Does that get included in relationships? So to find the right word just for our title for today took a little bit of application. And the reason why we chose relating was because it encompasses the whole activity. Now, if we follow the sequence of these Sunday Wisdom Sessions, earlier we spoke about the havoc that the mind can wreak and why it is vital for the intellect to come and play its part in managing and guiding this mind. This is the first aspect. But over the last few sessions, we've been highlighting the positive aspect of the intellect. How it strengthens our faith was the first aspect we covered. Then the second aspect in last session was in objectivity. Guides us to better decision making. Keeps us equanimous despite what's happening on the outside. Prepares us for challenges. But in this session, we learn how the intellect is crucial for relating. Now, what does it mean to relate? In the Bhagavad Gita, there's a whole chapter where it goes into the anatomy and the breakup of an action, of a verb. So in order to do any action, in order to do a verb, to do a thing, there are a few factors. And I've chosen 3 for today. And one of the factors is, what is the quality of the actor? What is the quality of the thing being acted upon? And then, the technique of acting. If a person wants to make a beautiful pot, what is the quality of the potter? In order to create the pot for which he needs or she needs the technique of pot making. The same thing with relating. And this is the part where we take it for granted. We take it for granted that relating, living, is something that we are naturally endowed with, that automatically we're gifted. But it requires skill, it requires analysis, it definitely requires intellect. And if we spend the time to develop our intellect and the skill of relating, each and every one of our relationships can improve dramatically. So before we continue, maybe take a moment to think of a relationship that is not going so well. A relationship that you would like to refine, a relationship that you would like to overhaul. Maybe a relationship that you would like to resolve. Perhaps it's a person, perhaps it's an object. Which relationship would you like to improve on? So keep that in mind. And as we go through some of the points today, let's see if we can take some life truth, some intellectual perspective to improve the quality of that relationship. In the beginning, when we talk about the anatomy of relating, and I'll put it up as a diagram, relating comprises of 2 aspects. The first is you, the subject. You are the subject in all of your relationships. The other is the object, the world. So in the diagram, we've got the subject and we've got the object. And depending on how the subject meets the object, so the quality of our relating. Now, relating is just that. It's an activity. It's a conscious, deliberate application. Application of what? You could apply your mind or you could apply your intellect. But in order to improve the quality of relating, we've got 3 things that we can work on. The first is understanding the nature of the subject, you. And we'll go into each aspect. The second is understanding the nature of the object, the world, the person, the object of the relating. The third aspect is, what is my technique? What is my strategy? What is the way I'm going to plan and execute relating, meeting the person? What is my technique? And if all 3, there is application and effort spent, you can definitely improve the quality of the relationship. So we start with the first one. Every human being, you are made up of, what are the constituents of you? Anyone?
BMI, body, mind, intellect.
BMI, body, mind, intellect. That's it? Anything else?
Spirit and matter.
Spirit and matter. Okay. So matter would include body, mind, intellect. Spirit, great. Anything else?
Ego.
Ego?
Vasanas.
Yes, ego could be there. The one I'm going to go with for today is vasanas. So when we look at the human being, we are familiar with the body. And in order to know oneself, we need to understand how each of our constituent parts work. And we can relate at each of the levels of the personality. So if we look at the outer layer of our personality, it's the body. Socrates, he says, to start philosophy, to start relating, know thyself. Aristotle, knowing thyself is the beginning of all wisdom. So we start with the body. The body, it's your tool, it's your vehicle. You can relate with the body. But if you relate with the body, we will be like animals. So we'll move when it gets warm to cooler places. When it gets too cold, we move to warmer places. So we're constantly at the mercy of how the body feels. The taste that we like, the taste that we don't like. Now, what about the mind? You could relate at the level of the mind. The mind is where the emotions are. And if something irritates you, you want to move away, you want to change it. If something causes you fear, causes you anxiety, you want to escape, you want to avoid it, we want to hide from it. And if something gives you comfort, solace, naturally, we're inclined, we gravitate towards it. So the mind has got a little bit more flexibility than the body. The body's absolutely at the mercy of the elements. The mind, a little bit more flexibility. But when it comes to the intellect has the ability to adapt. And that's where we have the edge over animals. We can live in Iceland. We've got human beings surviving in the Sahara. You can be in shorts and t-shirt in winter in Switzerland. Incredible. How? Because human beings have the ability to meet the world with the intellect, to adapt. Now, this is where we go a little bit deeper. And we spoke about this some time ago, but as a refresher, the quality of our body, the quality of our emotions, and the quality of our intellect, why we think the way we think, why we think what we think, comes from the seeds inherent in our nature, our inherent nature. And the Sanskrit word for that is called vasanas. Vasanas is a Sanskrit word, and it comes from the root vas, which means fragrance, perfume. So it is the essence of you. It is the fragrance of you. It's what you're made up of. So each of us has our own individual seeds called vasanas. Now, this is subtler than the intellect, and that's why in the diagram you're going within, deeper than the intellect, because it produces the quality of the intellect, mind, body. And depending on the vasanas, so your personality. If you've got music vasanas, you will find music in the way you think. You think in music. You see some of these great artists, they are pitch perfect. You play a note and they'll say C sharp. How? How do they know that? And they hear it in nature, maybe a drop. I say B flat. What skill? But they think, they feel in music, and naturally they sing, they play an instrument. They're drawn to music because of their music vasanas. But just as you have pitch perfect, you might have somebody who's tone deaf. Doesn't matter what they hear, how many music lessons they go to, no music talent whatsoever. Why? No vasanas. And depending on your vasanas, so your nature. And we find this is there from childhood. It is that which is inherent from the time of birth. And no doubt we can work on them, we can improve them, we can bring some down, we can encourage others. But they're there. Those seeds are there. Now it's a question of which ones we neglect, which ones we promote. But the vasanas are there from birth. Now, this is important to know because we can start assessing and understanding ourselves. We're able to see our limitations, we're able to see our weaknesses, we're able to see our strengths. So when we talk about relating to the world, you might have a beautiful strategy, you may understand your opponent very well, but you haven't done any self-analysis. We don't know what we're capable of. We don't know our strength. We don't know our capacity. So the relating or the meeting the opponent is not commensurate. And that's why understand our nature and go deeper. X-ray through, past the body's senses and its preference, past the mind's likes and dislikes and desires to the intellect, and the intellect's got the flexibility. The intellect's got the ability to understand the vasanas through expression, through how we see it manifesting. The intellect can understand it and then start harnessing the strength, protecting the weakness or strengthening the weakness. If we understand ourselves first, we go deeper. We start going from victim of circumstance to master of circumstance. We start changing a challenge into an opportunity. There's a saying, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed person is king. In the land of the blind, the one-eyed person is king. And the idea is, the person who's using the intellect, they've got a superior edge over others because they can assess, they can adapt, they can meet the situation. But to have both eyes open is when you go to the deepest level of your personality. It's when you know exactly who you are. So when you're clear about what is your goal in life, what is your role in life, what are your values that you want to live by, life becomes simple. The choices you need to make, the way you relate, all filters down from that clarity. I know what I want. I know the kind of person I want to be. I know the kind of person I am. And when you have that clarity, you meet the world accordingly. So you will know what you say yes to, you will know what you encourage in others, what you discourage. You will be clear. But the absolute clarity is when you understand yourself completely. And what is that state, anybody?
State of consciousness.
State of consciousness. Okay.
Awakening.
Awakening to? What are we awakening to?
Self-realization.
Self-realization. And sometimes we need to break up the words, because when we say the words together, self-realization, enlightenment, God realization, it loses its impact. It's when you realize that who you essentially are is the self, capital S, the spirit within, beyond the vasanas. That's your true personality. The vasanas come and go. The vasanas disappear, hopefully. We minimize them. The body, mind, intellect all change. We are essentially the self. Now, if you know you are the self, you are the spirit, if you understand and identify with that, imagine the clarity. We become so clear of what our priorities are. We become clear of what affects us, what doesn't affect us. I met a gentleman last week, and he was telling me how Vedanta helped him through a very precarious surgery after surgery. And he told me, what was the thought that got him through it, that made him so peaceful throughout the whole process? The thought was, it's just the body. Wow. Can you imagine this part of the world? I'm in Geneva today, and at our headquarters, this is in fact where our international work started, and this gentleman is saying, it's just the body. What a state. But you can only have that kind of conviction, you can only have that kind of non-affectation if we understand the essence of who we are is the self. He's not self-realized yet, but he's on the path to it. And even just being on the path towards it gives you that immunity to some extent for what the body goes through. Now, this is about having that clarity coming from first knowing who you are. So that's important. So we can keep on working on refining our knowledge of ourselves. The second part is, what are other people made up of? Their own vasanas. Each person, each aspect of the world has their or its own nature. Vasanas. Just as we have our own vasanas, we have our vasana for self-development, for philosophy, we have vasanas for sport, for business. Other people also have their vasanas. But this is the part that we miss. Everybody has their own nature. Every aspect of the world has its own nature. The mistake we usually make, we look for a part of the world or a person who has the exact nature as ours. The one that complements and meets the nature that we have. But this is impossible. No person, no two persons can have the same mind. No two persons can have the same vasanas. Each person is different. But what are we doing? We meet a person, and what we try to do is we try to convince them to follow our nature. It's impossible. They have their own seeds, their own nature, and you may try and force it upon another. In the end, it will rebel because it's not their nature. And this is where the conflict comes in. From the simple understanding right at the beginning of expecting others to function according to our nature. So this is where we move to the object, the world. And we use our intellect to start X-raying through and seeing what is the quality of, could be the country, it could be that government, it could be that person. And when we start X-raying through and we find the nature, the characteristics that make up that country, that community, that person, that particular person, could be a family member, then we become clear of what to expect from that person. So we become clear about our nature, but now we have to be clear about the other person's nature. Then what about the technique? Where does the technique come in? We can relate to another person's nature. And this is where I ask you, in relationships today, what are people looking for? Like if you ask a Gen Z, what kind of relationship are you looking for? Who do you want as a partner? What will they say?
Someone that caters to their likes and
Someone who caters to their likes, yes.
someone who will give them freedom, no expectation.
Freedom.
Is mostly and no commitments. If I need you, you come, and if I don't need you, you don't come. Something like that.
This sounds like and this is what we're seeing in relationships. It sounds like we expect this from every person that we meet. We expect this from parents. We expect this from partners. We want all the plus side of it without any of the entanglements, without any maintenance. Impossible. And that is why when we find people relating, you don't find long-term relationships happening. It's becoming fewer and fewer. If I meet a couple that's been married for 25 years, 30 years, I say, congratulations. It's inspiring. Because it takes so much of understanding to make a relationship work. And it takes so much of unselfishness as well. To understand the other side that comes with a person meeting the things that you want. We find, and this has been throughout not just this generation, everybody's looking for compatibility. Is this person compatible? Is this person right for me? Is this person going to meet all my desires? And nowhere do we ask the question, am I right for them? Because naturally, they're getting into a relationship for their needs as well. So we don't look at it from the other person's perspective. We don't look at it as what they want. We're only looking at it from our perspective. But it's not about compatibility. Compatibility is not a guarantee that the relationship is going to work. Leo Tolstoy, he says, what counts in making a happy marriage work is not so much how compatible you are, but how you deal with incompatibility. You can meet a person who's 90% compatible with you. Perfect. But naturally, because every person is different, there's a 10% variation. And in that 10%, we're not able to deal with the incompatibility and we complain, we make a drama, and we ruin the relationship. So it's not about how compatible you are. Because in the areas that you're compatible, there is no effort. The effort in relating is dealing with the areas of difference, dealing with incompatibility. And here's the thing, you can disagree, but it does not have to lead to a confrontation and argument. And perhaps in society, we have lost the art of debate. We've lost the art of discourse and discussion, where we can present a point of view without getting riled up. But to listen and to hear the other person's point of view. When does it become an argument, a confrontation? Is when we try to impose our view on the other person or vice versa. But to hear another person's point of view could be educational, enlightening, give a fuller picture, add to context. Now, when it comes to animals, we have no problem. We see the nature of animals clearly. And because we have understood the vasanas of a particular animal, our behavior is appropriate. We meet the animal according to its nature. I'll give you an example. How would you meet a puppy? If you have a golden retriever and you've got puppies, how would you relate to them? How would you meet them? Smitha, how would you take care of these puppies?
A lot of love.
A lot of love.
Whatever they do.
So you give a lot of affection. They want to be with you always. I have the experience of being in Kenya with these golden retriever puppies, and they just come and they, even if I'm studying or working at the computer, they come and they just be by my feet. So how do you relate with them? You can pick them up, you can give them affection, you can cuddle them. But how would you relate to a tiger? Distant. You can admire the tiger, you can appreciate the tiger. Any of you who have seen tigers in the wild, so majestic, so magnificent, you appreciate it. But you would not go near the tiger and say, "Here, kitty, 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 come here." And you would not hold the tiger. Otherwise, you'll come back with a few limbs missing. Why? Because you understand the tiger knows what is fresh meat. And because you have a clear assessment of the tiger, you know exactly how to behave to the tiger. You know how to behave to the puppy. You know how to behave to the porcupine, which is prickly, can't touch it. You know how to behave to a lamb. So with animals, we're very clear on what our behavior should be because animals have collective vasanas. They fit a particular mold, and because the mold is consistent, we know what to expect, and our behavior is according to our understanding of that species, of that breed. But with human beings, we get into all sorts of messes. And the reason is because we don't assess each human being uniquely. With human beings, here's the challenge. We don't have a collective vasanas. It's not all human beings are the same. Sometimes you can. For instance, if you are in this part of the world, Swiss German, if you say, we are leaving at 3:13, your host, your train, your plane will leave at 3:13. If you say this, perhaps further east you go, India has improved a great deal, but at some point, if you were to say 3:30, it is more of an approximation of AM or PM? Afternoon? Is it before tea time or after tea time? And this is something that amazed me. Everything is often with reference to food. Is it before lunch or after lunch? And it's a flexible figure. And this is it. So yes, you could generalize in a way, but if you want to get the relationship perfect, assess the person in front of you. Know the person in front of you so you can align your expectations accordingly. But now, with human beings, you could have one person that's a tiger. Now you're going and you're embracing the tiger and you're getting hurt. You're getting mauled. You don't blame the person. You've got to blame your assessment. What are you doing hugging a tiger? There are tigers among human beings. There are puppies among human beings. Give them your affection. There are snakes among human beings. Watch out. They bite. There are chameleons. You see one color, you see another color. But because we do not assess human beings uniquely, based on their particular nature, we are getting hurt, disappointed, rejected, betrayed, whose fault is it? It is not the other person because they're acting according to their nature, just as you're acting according to your nature. It is our fault for not understanding the other person's nature. But Sudhakar, I trusted him. Why did you give your trust to an untrustworthy person? But you've got to trust. No, you do not have to trust. If you are going to trust, trust a person who is trustworthy. Or is there a way that you can trust where you don't need the trust? In the sense, you have a system, you have protocols. So for instance, our passports, when we travel, the little bit of finances that we have for our travels, it does not matter where we are, who we're staying with. We always keep it locked. Now, can you say, oh, I left it out on the table, and then you go complaining to the hotel? I think housekeeping took my wallet, my phone. Do not give the room for that. So it's not a question of trust or don't trust. You don't put anybody in the position where you need to. You have not met the person, you don't know. So what you do there is by putting yourself in a position where you don't need to be at the mercy of another person's nature. But this requires thinking, this requires analysis. Exactly. We do this with the weather. If you come to India in June, July, August, and you're saying, Northern Hemisphere, we're looking forward to a beautiful summer, I come to India. And you come there with all your enthusiasm, say, oh, I'm going to see Rishikesh, and I'm going to visit you, Sudhakar, at Vedanta Academy. I say, yes, please come. And then you come there, and it's raining. You've not brought an umbrella, you've not brought gumboots, and every day it's raining. And you're coming out every day and saying, what is this summer? In India, in July, August, it will rain and rain because it is monsoon. Different parts of India, different intensity of monsoon. So we assess the weather, we pack accordingly. If you go expecting sunshine because it's summer, you will be disappointed. But the disappointment is on you for not understanding the weather of India at that time. No doubt, there may be some bizarre fluctuations. Absolute sunshine for a couple of days. It happens. But it's an exception. Same thing. You might have a tiger that does not bother you, that just moves past you. It's a rare exception. Nature is consistent. So what is our role? Our role is to start using the technique of relating. And what we do when we relate is we relate with the mind. So if we look at the body, mind, intellect diagram, the mind sees people, situations, objects and persons through its likes and dislikes. So it doesn't see the person for who they are, for their nature. It sees what they would like to see. And we do this particularly with our loved ones. It's like we reserve the worst treatment and expectations of wanting a person to be something different from who they are for those we love the most. And we say, what? I would like the person to be like that. I would like my partner to be more understanding. I would like my son to take up Vedanta. You say, but isn't it a good like? Isn't it a healthy like? It's not a healthy like if they are not interested. You're turning them away from the subject. So, what is the way to relate? The way to relate to a person is to understand their nature based on what you've observed, based on the data. And that's what the intellect does. The intellect looks, and this is the objectivity, the intellect looks at the qualities of the person, the nature of the person, aggressive person, vicious person, okay, tiger. All right, then how should I relate? So instead of seeing the person as we would like them to be, we start seeing them as they are. And the exercise to bring and develop this intellect or use it in our relationships is called assessment. And the suggestion is, for relating, and it could be different objects, but let's use people for now. It could be the government, it could be the business, the market that you're in. Whatever you'd like to relate better with, choose it. Let's take a person for now. And I would recommend doing this for the key people that you interact with in day-to-day life. So it could be your partner, it could be each of your children, because each child needs a different strategy, needs a different relationship. But also each employee, each business partner. So the people that you are in close proximity with, perhaps do it in a notebook, pen and paper, and for each person do a chart. So it could be your partner. All right, so put your partner's name on the top, and on the left-hand side, put down all the observed qualities of your partner. Now here's the thing, we have the data of our partner. We have more than enough information about them. You're married for 5 years, 10 years, even if it's 1 year. You have too much data on your partner. The problem is not the lack of data. It is lack of assessment of the data. And on the right-hand side, going respectively to each observed quality, put down what is your relating strategy for that quality. So you would put my partner. My partner is an excellent organizer. Relating strategy, let's see if we can get it to do more, or him to get it to do more of the planning for certain aspects of the family. My partner is an excellent chef. My partner is very short fuse. Just like that, explodes. Explosive personality. Okay. And then, so you're putting down all these different characteristics. You could put, my partner is punctual, my partner is not punctual. In fact, all the time the partner is late by 30 minutes. Now, when you put down all these observed qualities, and I'll give you an example here. The idea of this list is not to judge the other person. And please do not show your partner this list or your child. You will be in some real trouble if you show them. Because say, oh, this is what you think of me? Yes, but no, do not show them. Because the idea is not to criticize them, not to put them on a spot, but it's for you to help understand them better. And by writing it, it makes it clear. It makes you able to accept what is there. So, okay. And I'll show you a chart here where we've got all the different observed qualities. Now, what will my relating strategy be? So, for example, if my partner is kind, caring, if that is the partner's nature, what will my relating strategy be? I've got to show kindness. I've got to be appreciative. I've got to be open to the care. If the partner is calm, I can trust the person. I can be patient with them. If the person is honest, direct, then I've also, from my side, I've got to be clear and direct when I communicate with them. If the person is disciplined, I've got to be structured in the way I interact with them. Same thing, if the person is not punctual, I've got to keep a buffer for their lack of punctuality. I've got to keep a little extra time. So if I tell them 6 p.m. and they're usually half an hour late, then maybe I need to change that and tell them 5:30 p.m. And then when your partner comes at 6 p.m., instead of arguing, shouting, why are you late? I told you this, I sent you a message. Because you've understood the partner, you knew exactly how to relate. but after some time your partner starts catching on. You always tell me half an hour earlier than we need to go. I'm not going to do it anymore. I know. So what do you do then? Tell them 1 hour before. Like that, you can play with it. Or if you know that you are going to leave at a particular time, inform the people that you're meeting. Look, we're probably going to be half an hour late. And just that preparation changes the nature of the situation. People in corporate, they complain about dealing with egoistic people in the corporate workplace. But if we assess that a person is egoistic, they are the easiest people to relate to. How do you relate with egoistic people? Flatter them. Give them credit. And they're your best friend. You get the work done. How? Just by understanding their language. What they need in order to understand, in order to relate. Now, if you are talking logic to an emotional person, they're not going to go with you. And if you are talking emotion to a logical person, they're not going to go with you. We've got to see the other person's nature and meet them accordingly. That's the language. Does this mean we accept all sorts of behavior, all sorts of nature? Look, if you can change another person's nature, if you can change the nature of an object, the nature of a situation that you're in, by all means change it. But what cannot be changed, what cannot be cured, must be endured. But it doesn't have to be a heavy endurance. It does not have to be tolerating, oh my goodness, again this person. It is an accepting that people's natures are different. And in that accepting what you cannot change, there can be serenity. Reinhold Niebuhr, he writes the Serenity Prayer. And in that he says, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And this is it. So what we can change, by all means change. But now if you are trying to change your partner for the last 15 years, perhaps we need to change ourselves and change our expectations of that person. Nature takes a long time to change. It doesn't change in 90 degrees, it doesn't change overnight. The idea of vasanas is it requires so much of effort to change. And here's the thing, you cannot change another person's vasanas. They have to change when they're ready, if they want to change. So instead of keep on trying to change the world and move the world and change things around, it might be easier to change ourselves and change our technique and how we meet the world in front of us. Instead of meeting it as we would like it to be, accept its nature. And then adapt. And you might even enjoy the rain. Put an umbrella. In fact, where the Vedanta Academy is, it's a steady monsoon. It rains and rains. But it's actually a beautiful time to visit. It's green and there are waterfalls, and because we're away from the city, the rain is warm and clean. It's beautiful. So people actually come during that time to that region to enjoy the beauty of that rainforest kind of atmosphere, that cloudy but mystical ambience. So you can even enjoy it. And there's an example that Swamiji gives in the book, The Fall of the Human Intellect, which these lectures are based on, these series. And in the series and this section, he talks about a story. And this was when the author Swamiji in 1939, so at 12 years old, and remember, he remembers it so vividly that it's in print, and I'm sharing it with you today. It says in 1939, It's a blazing summer's day, 44 degrees Celsius in Chennai. And there's a group of boys in a classroom, including Swamiji, and all of them fanning themselves, and they're so hot. The clothes are sticking to them, so hot, so uncomfortable. And the teacher comes in, and he sees all the boys in so much of discomfort and just fanning themselves. And he sees this sight, and he calls the boys. And they go outside the classroom into the open quadrangle, and there is no roof. It is blazing sunshine, 44 degrees Celsius. And all the boys are wondering, what is this teacher doing? Why has he brought us into the open quadrangle? It's so hot here. And the teacher starts a message that the author remembers, which I'm sharing with you today. He says, boys, isn't this a beautiful summer's day? And all of them thought, this teacher has lost it. Maybe sunstroke. The heat has finally gotten to this guy. But the author took note, because what he said then made such an impact in his life. He said, the beauty of summer is its heat. The beauty of winter is its biting cold. The beauty of autumn is the changing leaves, depending on which part of the world you're in. The beauty of spring is this effervescence of life. The beauty of anything is its nature. And this is it. But we want the winter to be warm. We want the summer to be cool. We want to change the nature of something to something it isn't. Instead of accepting maybe the beauty of that thing is the thing. The beauty of sugar is its sweetness. The beauty of salt is its saltiness. But can't you get a sweet sugar? A sweet salt? A salty sugar? The beauty of anything is its nature. But a fair person wants to be tanned. A dark person wants to be fair. Why are we trying to change the nature of things? We were having lunch in Zurich with our host, and he had spent some time in Spain, so he had a nice tan complexion. And the waitress says, "Oh, ooh, Swiss lady, ooh, you have a nice tan, ooh, lovely complexion." And he says, "But what about my friends there?" And she says, "No, they are naturally like that. Naturally, they are perfect." So she was saying, and this is it. It's like the beauty of anything is what you have. But how is it that our mind makes us want the thing that it doesn't have? The beauty of winter is the cold. The beauty of summer is its heat. And if you can go a little bit deeper than that to even think, the beauty of my partner is their nagging nature. How beautifully they nag and they persevere. They don't give up. Real Shraddha. They go to the end of it. The beauty of anything is its nature. If you wake up in the morning and you expect your partner to come running along and say, "Oh, darling, so glad you woke up. Here is your cup of tea." You must understand that is not your partner. You are in the wrong house. And if you wake up in the morning and if you ask for a cup of tea and your partner says, "Am I your servant? Go and get your tea yourself," then you understand, this is my partner. I am in the right house. Assessment is the key. And all it is seeing things as they are. So if you have a look in this diagram, you see that if you have a lack of assessment or a wrong assessment, you expect an unpunctual person to be punctual, you have an unreasonable expectation. Why is it unreasonable? because the person is not capable. They don't have the nature for it. They have an unpunctual nature. They will need a lot of support, reminders to be punctual. You're expecting a tiger to be a puppy. It's not possible. And therefore we are disappointed, stressed. But now work backwards, and this is the art of relating. If you have a negative interaction with someone, a stressful situation, instead of trying to correct them, instead of trying to change them, instead of deflecting and blaming the other person, let us look within, with our intellect, and see what was my unreasonable expectation. I expected this person to be receptive to my feedback. Wrong assessment. They are egoistic. They will not want feedback from me. So what do I need to do? Change my assessment. This person's egoistic. They would not like feedback. No problem. If your assessment is perfect, your expectation is the right expectation. No disappointment, no stress. So straight away today, if we do this useful exercise of assessment, we can have better relationships. And we can do it with everything. We can do it with the nature of business in a country. We can do it with the stock market. We can do it with the weather. But most importantly, we should also do it with ourselves. Assess yourself. Otherwise, we become judgmental, we become critical, we become impatient. This is where I am, and no doubt Vedanta gives us an idea of where I could be. It's going to take some time. Assess yourself. I'm a work in progress. This is where I am, so I'll accept it. And when there is acceptance, then you can adapt and use your nature to go step by step. So the same principles for others apply to ourselves. The art of relating is knowing yourself, knowing the object of relating, and constantly as we relate, look at the nature of the object rather than seeing them as we would like it to be. You see your son as he is, not the version in your head, not the ideal version that you would like the son to be. Then there is connection. Then there is communication. That is the art of relating. And now we open it to your questions.
We will take up the submitted questions. The first question is, how is making an effort to relate to people different from letting people treat you badly?
So, when you decide to let people treat you badly, it is because we have not set the boundary. We have not made it clear in the way we react, in the way we interact, that we will not be spoken to in that particular tone. We will not be open to that. So in our reaction to the person, if we're going to convey that that behavior is not on, we've got to come up with a relating strategy. So if a person raises their voice at you, so the relating strategy, what should that be? Now, if we keep quiet, the person keeps raising their voice at you because for them, they understand that they can do it. So then you think, okay, let me raise my voice. And then it becomes an argument. It escalates. Now and then, it could be a strategy where you could decide, okay, let me surprise them and raise my voice. And they get surprised, they go into shock. But I wouldn't suggest that. Perhaps, and it's depending on the nature of the person, so we don't have specifics to go by, so I'm giving the general idea. It could be when the person starts raising the voice, shut off, shut down. In sense, sorry, I cannot communicate at this volume, so please excuse me. You're not confronting the other person. You're not telling the person to change their behavior. You're not criticizing the other person. I'm not comfortable with this. Excuse me. What it does is it forces the other person to start assessing you. I cannot speak to the person that way if I want to have a conversation with him. The simplest thing is, if you do not want to relate to a person who treats you badly, you don't have to relate. But then are we going to cut off everybody in our lives? So we take those aspects when a person becomes emotional, when a person gets upset, and we ensure that we are ready for it and know how to behave in that situation so that we do not get that treatment. In every relationship, we've got to set the minimum and the maximum. What we can live with and what is just not worth the effort in relating. And when we are clear about that, we're able to adjust and meet the person accordingly. So you understand a person's being very emotional, so you're giving some leeway. You've understood the emotion is taking over, but you also understand when the emotion is coming, I know how the person's going to behave. This is the time to move away. Give the person the space for the emotion to calm down. So you're also knowing how to adapt and assess the situation. And with these small adjustments, you don't have to abandon the relationship because you get so many positive aspects of it. And this is the thing. For every negative or dislike behavior that we experience doesn't mean we need to remove the relationship. And this is where we can, with intelligent assessment and adaptation, we can change the quality of the relationship. I'll give you an example. One lady, she was complaining that her husband, every time he asks for an opinion, if he gives two choices, darling, what should we get for the kitchen? A or B? She says, oh, darling, I would love to get A. He says, okay, great, we'll get B. The next day, he comes and he says, where do you think we should go for vacation? A or B? This time she says B. He says, great, we'll go for A. So how can I live with this person? They are disrespecting my decision. Everything I say, they do the opposite. Simple assessment, adaptation. Anything your partner presents to you, they will do the opposite. So if you want what you want, you tell them the opposite of what you want, no problems thereafter. Next question.
The second question is, how is assessing and relating different to manipulation?
So, manipulation is when you are doing it for a selfish end. Communication is when you are speaking the language that that person understands. So you're doing it for the relationship, for the connection. Now, people often call manipulation is when you're not being true to yourself. But let's examine that, because it's something like this. If the other person knows German and you know English and you know German, but your first language is English. So what do? Say, I will be true to myself. I will speak my mother tongue. I will speak my first language, English. To who? The German, who does not know English. And you are talking English. Why? Because I must be true to myself. Fine. No communication, no relationship. But if you know the language, if you know how to speak German, if you speak German to the German, connection. You're speaking the language they understand. This is called relating. It's not being untrue to yourself. It is using the skills in order to communicate with the other person. In what? To get a message across, to get your point across. You may not be an emotional person by nature, but if you're talking to an emotional person, how do you convey a point? They don't understand logic. So we've got to meet the person where they are. So you speak the emotion that you know. Oh, come on, do it for my sake, please. But if you give them logic, you say, look, if you do this, it'll benefit, it will increase your energy. How? Because it doesn't work for them. But you give an emotional appeal, it works. So it's not manipulation. It is speaking the language the other person understands.
Question 3. Do teenagers require some different special formula for relating?
I'm guessing this question comes from a parent. The challenge parents face with teenagers is they are at that interim stage where they're no longer a child. A child is when you have full mind and you need the guidance of the parent. Now, at the age of 8, the intellect starts emerging. And this is where the child is supposed to transition into independence. So what starts happening is, now that the child can start thinking for themselves, forming conclusions with their intellect, they start challenging our direction or the parent's direction. And if we try the same way to just give instruction, they start rebutting the instruction. But we think the role of parenting is to give instruction, give guidance constantly. Your time for guidance should be minimized. It's in those impressionable years. Now we've got to treat them as teenagers with intellects. So we've got to give explanation. We've got to give logic. We've got to, rather than telling them what to do, because they rebel the instruction, they rebel the constant supervision, we've got to decide what is really important that we need to tell them. But if you're telling them everything that's on your mind, the teenager will not tolerate it. In fact, it'll be conflict. So the way to relate to a teenager is to understand what the teenager is going through. What is their nature? How will they respond? Not just a teenager. How will any person respond to so much instruction? And try and minimize the instruction for when it is crucial. And even then, approach it carefully. In the sense, I noticed something. Would you be open to some feedback? If you're open to feedback, I can share it. But if you're not, it's okay. Now, right now, whether they're open or they're not open, I have something to tell you. But if they're not ready to receive what you have to tell, it does not have the effect that you're looking for. In fact, it has the opposite effect. If you find the child is receptive, by all means you can share. If the child is not receptive, we're only making it worse. Threat, fear, instruction, this should be the last resort for relating to a teenager. Instead, rather provoke them, ask questions that get them to think and hopefully end up in the conclusion that is best for them.
We're in an area where emotions are involved. How do you know you are accurately assessing the other person?
In an area where we are emotional, and could be the other person's emotional, where we are emotional, and we mentioned this in the lecture on objectivity, be suspicious of your assessment. Because we are emotional, our assessment may be incorrect. We're seeing it through the lens of our desire. We're seeing it through the lens of our emotion. So we may not actually be seeing the person as they are. We're very angry with them. So we're seeing all the worst aspects. Now we see this with family. When we're upset with family, all the cases that you've had lined up for years comes to the fore, all the negative cases. And in those moments of appreciation, you've got all the positive cases lined up also. Come straight away. this is bias. It's emotional bias. And this is where it is useful to have that assessment sheet done, maybe when we're not emotional. And where we can look at it and see both sides. Yes, the person is like this, they're also like that. And they provide this, and they don't meet that. But you have that done when you are calm, quiet. And if you're very emotional and you need to make a decision about somebody that's close to you, you're not sure how to assess them, consult someone who has a higher intellect, who's objective in the situation and knows the nature of the other person. Now what we do is, we go and we talk to somebody about the person we're battling with, but the portrayal that we give of that person is colored by our bias. So that person, even if they have an intellect, cannot help us because they're colored by the portrayal of the person. So the suggestion is, wait for the emotion to calm down. Then do the assessment, and if we can, if there is somebody in our life that has a higher intellect and knows the other person somewhat, they can provide some perspective and some truth to the situation.
The last question. What do you do when your assessment of a person is proved incorrect and you are not sure how you got it wrong? And what you need to do for a new assessment in order to relate?
So, if we look at that diagram where it starts, wrong assessment of lack of assessment, leads to unreasonable expectation, leads to disappointment, stress. So when you say that we've got the relationship wrong or the relating, the assessment wrong, that means we met with a negative effect. Okay? So the question we can ask ourselves is, what was my unreasonable expectation? What did I expect from the person that did not come to reality? And that might be the question to ask. Where in my thinking did I go wrong? Or if I'm not quite sure where in my thinking, what could I do differently to change the result? And that means in solving and locating the assessment, what in the understanding of the person, as we said, tiger is ferocious, puppy is cute, harmless. In the assessment, what do we need to change? So this is where we could do a little bit of trial and error to get the relating right, especially with family members. What strategy works, what strategy doesn't. But because we are not approaching relationships rationally with the intellect, we're not learning from the data. We're not learning from our experiences. If you are having the same argument with your spouse for 10 years, what does it mean? Zero intellect. We're not reflecting. We're not seeing how it can be done differently. We're not improving in the next situation. Why? We're not using the data. Now, we've got so much of our own data to reflect on, but you've also got all other people's data. You have all your other family relationships that we can take into account, and we can fast track this whole relating business and master it. But we're not using the intellect. Therefore, the necessity or the need of the hour is to develop the intellect. And we've got to find a way to make it not a Sunday wisdom session, 1 hour in the week, but a daily practice of putting these thoughts into us, allowing them to stir, be provoked, and making these micro changes in our perspective. So where is that half an hour in your day that you're dedicating to changing your thoughts? What I would recommend is the Vedanta e-learning program. It's by the author of the book, where he actually explains paragraph by paragraph, not just this first book, The Fall of the Human Intellect, but all 12 books. It takes 3 years at the Vedanta Academy, but online you can do it much quicker. And you just go in order, lecture by lecture, deeper and deeper into the subject. Watch for half an hour, reflect for a few minutes, on to the next lecture. And that's it. And if you're not ready yet for the e-learning course, I would say use the earlier Sunday wisdom sessions. The recordings are open and accessible to everybody. Make use of that, but keep these thoughts going in a structured format. So thank you everybody for joining us this week on Relating. Next week, we meet to talk about success. Thank you.